Ballpark Nation presents. Welcome to Go Astros, your look at the two-time World Series champions from three guys who have been here since Art Howe had hair.
And good morning, Astros fans. It is April 8th. It's a Monday. We're 10 games into this 2024 Astros season, and everything's going swimmingly, right, guys? Exactly as the plan it was written out. You do have to think on a pivot sometimes, and because of that, Brian is out traveling today, I assume looking for a first baseman for our franchise since we can't seem to find one.
He's looking for Yuli,
but with us,
that's the solution.
Again, 30 other teams didn't want to sign him either. It's not just us.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
That's James Christopher. In place of Brian today, we have the renowned and world famous, some call him Tim. We know him as San Antonio Tim, joining us as the third mic today. Welcome.
Thank you, guys. Really appreciate the invite and excited to be here.
So the Astros are 3-7, as everybody knows. We did win last night. The offense worked for one inning, so that was something. It immediately went back to sleep right after that. Tim, you're new to the show. What are some positives we can take from this early first 10 games of the season, I guess? We all know the negatives. They're pretty easy to spell out, and we'll probably get to them. But what are some things that are working?
Well, the starting pitching has been, for the most part, really good, and especially Ronel Blanco. I mean, he was supposed to be the long relief guy, but the injuries kind of forced him into the rotation, and he's been the Astros' best pitcher by far, so far. Fromber, it looks like more like 22 Fromber than 23 Fromber to me. You're getting more ground balls, getting the strikeouts again. So really like that. Javier, I think looks better than he did last year. Getting the spin on his fastballs back up to where it was, velocity a little higher than it was last year. So starting pitching has been probably the brightest spot of the team so far. Altuve's off to a fast start. But
Altuve's on a pace for 243 hits this year. I don't assume he's going to maintain that, but maybe he's just trying to get to 3,000 this year. Just wipe it out so I don't have to worry about it the rest of my contract.
I don't think he's ever going to age. I mean, I say that facetiously, but he's amazing. I mean, I don't know how he keeps doing it year after year. Just a phenomenal talent.
Phenomenal.
I think the starting pitching is dead on. Most of us were concerned about that. And the big questions, as you mentioned, Fromber and Christian Javier rebounding. So far, I think that's happened. Not so much for Hunter Brown. Still time to be told on that story, I think. But since you brought up Ronel, that's been the story so far of the early season for the Astros is he's had two incredible performances, one no-hitter and one six-inning no-hitter. Which is not an official stat, but we might make it one depending on how the season goes. We're going to find the positives, guys. Get a one-inning no-hitter going. All right. But what does that do? Because we know Justin Verlander threw his first rehab start in Sugar Land a couple days ago and did not get hurt again, so that's positive news. What happens when JV comes back? I don't see it any way that you can, and we'll start with Jim on this, put Ronel back in his long relief role at this point. So who's the likely candidate to get bumped from the rotation?
I actually could see a world where Hunter Brown goes back to Sugar Land for a bit to reset. I don't think it's a talent thing. I think that it is perhaps a mental thing, perhaps needing just a second to sort of reset. So I could almost see that happening in the bullpen staying the same. The one thing that's interesting about the bullpen complaint, and Andy, we saw when we were in Corpus together on Saturday, Taylor Scott's had one bad outing, but the rest of them have been really good outings. And actually the failing of the bullpen are the three guys that no one in the universe would have thought would have failed, being Presley, Abreu, and Hader, even giving up a run last night. So part of me thinks that those three guys, like our offense, are going to come around. I don't think that all three of them are going to be bad for the entire season. In fact, Presley looked quite good last night. I think 8 pitches to get out of the 8th, something like that. So I actually could see him. I could see a situation where we get Hunter Brown a little time to reset and come back and be the weapon that I think the Astros know he can be. He still has options left, and that might actually make it the least unsettling move to do until, because we know that Garcia should be back, maybe even sooner than we thought, and Urquidy as well, and then real decisions will have to be made at that point.
And there is the ghost of Lance McCullers Jr. that might come back sometime this year.
I'm gonna try going into the bathroom, turning off the lights, and saying Lance McCullers 3 times, and seeing if that will make him appear. I don't know that it will, but we'll see.
Tim, how about you? What happens when JV comes back?
Well, I know there was some discussion of possibly going to a 6-man rotation. You still have some young arms in that rotation that you probably want to make sure you monitor their workload. But if they do not go to a 6-man rotation, I would expect that Hunter may move to the bullpen, or as Jim mentioned, possibly sent down to AAA. Obviously, Bielak cannot be optioned. He's out of options. And, I don't really feel comfortable with him as being the only long man in the bullpen, though. I think they could use another long bullpen arm like a Hunter Brown or a France to kind of bridge that gap to the back end guys. But, if they don't go to 6-man rotation, I think Hunter Brown is the one who's removed from the rotation.
Yeah, and I don't think any of our starters have really given, a definite I need to be removed from the rotation kind of performance yet so far this year. Hunter Brown's probably the worst of the candidates, and that's in quotes because he had a decent start and then he had a really bad start. Another guy that we don't mention, and I think gets a lot of heat for last year and a lot of heat because Jeff Bagwell evidently signed him to a contract with nobody's approval. Rafael Montero has looked really good so far this year. And I know people bitch about every time he goes in it gets put in a game, and I may have been guilty of that last night. But 196 or 193 ERA, 0.86 whip. I don't know what else you need from a reliever. He hasn't he's been everything he was supposed to be based on 2022. And to Brian's point, since he's not here, it is an even numbered year. So maybe that's just the Montero thing. We just need to get what we can out of this year and then hide him next year.
I did see as we dive into pitching stuff, and I know we'll get back to that, but we have a comment that says we have a Forrest Whitley sighting yesterday. He did throw an inning yesterday. I don't know how it went. I will effort that information, as they say in the business.
I feel like Forrest Whitley is like the eclipse. We're going to hear a lot about it, but nobody in Texas is going to see it.
Actually, that's not apparently. Look, I don't care about that stuff. However, my wife is driving out about an hour to Fredericksburg because they're going to have 4 minutes of totality, which is the longest amount of totality in the country. Boom.
I could make a wife and totality joke, but I'm just going to lay there. But 4 minutes is impressive.
Yeah, Whitley did, just FYI, Whitley, first batter he faced gave a home run, but the velocity was up to 98, and that was the only hit he gave up in his 1 inning of work yesterday.
Well, yeah. I mean so if that becomes what he does, then.
And I don't want anybody to misunderstand. I hope Forrest Whitley has some measure of success in the major leagues. I hope he makes his debut this year. But this is something that has been going on since Jeff Lunau was the GM. He's coming. It's just right on the cusp, and we've never seen him in the major. Not even a cup of coffee at this point. So I am fully in the reserve category of skeptic when it comes to Forrest Whitley. But I hope it works out for him because it looks like we're going to need some pitching help at some point this year, even with the 38 starters we have coming back at some time between now and August.
Yeah, I think with Whitley, I see a lot of fans say, "Oh, I'm done with Whitley. I've given up." He's still in the system. He still has a live arm. I don't give up on players until they're out of the system. If the pedigree is there, health has kind of held him back. I'll hang in there with him until there's no reason to hang in there with him. That's kind of how I look at things.
So I actually like what you've seen out of the intestinal fortitude of the kid for not giving up. Because he's had a lot of injuries that might have had other players say, well, I guess it's not going to happen for me. You can call it a career. I think seeing him keep getting out there every year and trying his best to make it is proof enough to stick with him.
So, Tim, you're not in the school of DFAing any player that disappoints you in any way? Because a lot of Astros Twitter is. I just want to make sure where you stand on that.
Yeah, and I'm also not in the camp of just cutting McCullers because he's injury prone. I mean, the contract is sunk cost anyways. That's another thing that gets on my nerves sometimes with Astros fans. Oh, just get rid of him. Why? You got to pay him. There's nothing you can do. He's got elite stuff when he's healthy. It doesn't make sense to me sometimes.
Well, they forget that these baseball contracts are not football contracts and are guaranteed no matter what you do to them. So whatever you want to say, your problems with the luxury tax remain whether or not Abreu is on the team or not at this point, because it's a guaranteed contract. Right. So you might as well keep running him out there and hope that the pedigree and the history catch up with him. And, I think I don't understand. He had a really good second half in playoffs last year. My biggest issue with him is I wish the defense seems like it's taken a step back this year, but we've seen it in an Astros uniform. We've seen him take over games already. I don't understand why we think that can't happen again after 10 games of a 2024 season.
Yeah, well, it's generally, I think the Venn diagram would have a lot of overlap. These are the same people that want to trade Alex Bregman because we started 3-7, and guess what? Started slow again in April. We're not going to be good this year, so let's just go ahead and get rid of him now and see how many Class A prospects we can get for him. We'll probably throw Forrest Whitley in that, and maybe Lance McCullers Jr. Because all teams want to take players that aren't performing in exchange for really good prospects, right? That's how baseball trades work.
Well, I was thinking we should trade Abreu for Goldschmidt straight up.
Yeah,
you think
the Cardinals are the kind of organization that would make that trade, aren't they?
It might be.
I'll have to ask Scott McIntyre or Gary Warren about how they feel about that.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think I know that we've gotten a criticism on the show of you guys reflect too much on the behavior of Astros Twitter, and for me, I think it's as much a part of the story as anything that happens on the field, because when people want to call us a Mickey Mouse franchise, a lot of the reason why people call us that is because of the reaction of those fans anytime. I mean, if you had a 3-7 stretch in the middle of July, nobody blinks an eye, because it happened to happen in April and March and April. The sky is falling, and I just don't think that's the case. I know I saw a chart here. Brian's not here, so I'll talk about underlying numbers that, blah, blah, blah. But apparently the Astros have been hitting into a lot of bad luck, and they have guys with that are hitting for high average and high OPS, just not all at once. And that we've seen that turn before in this.
To that point, we have 6 guys in our starting lineup that have an OPS of over 800. Altuve is far out in the lead because he's sitting at like a 1.132 OPS. But Pena, Myers, Diaz, Alvarez, Tucker are all having decent start to their seasons. And that's with Alvarez not having a great first week. But then there's a big line and a big drop-off, and that unfortunately includes 3 other guys that are in our starting lineup, namely Chaz, Bregman, and Abreu. And as much as I want to talk about positives, I'm not picking on Alex Bregman because he will start hitting once the calendar hits a certain day. He does every year. Chaz has proven, and he's still young enough, that it's not a bad start, it's not a great start. Jose Abreu, on the other hand, is neither young nor having a good season nor coming off a good season. What is the answer for first base at this point? Because Singleton's not the answer. Abreu's not the answer, apparently, unless we're going to have just a whole lot of rope. But is there any hope that one of those guys is going to put together going to put together a league average season? Or are we going to have to look outside the organization for a first baseman? Because for whatever reason, we can't seem to develop a first baseman. Or is it Joey Loperfido? Start with Tim. A lot of questions in there.
Yeah, I think, I know Abreu is off to a horrible start. You can't hide that. And he does look, he's starting to look old, at least from what you can see early. He's been a notoriously slow starter throughout his career. When he was in Chicago, he started slow, not this slow, obviously, but he's always been a slow starter. So, and the options outside of him are not really much better. And I made a comment on Twitter yesterday. The Astros need to see if they can get Abreu back to what we saw once he came off the IL last year in August, because he was probably our best hitter from August 23rd through the playoffs, maybe Jordan, but he was awesome. I mean, he was crushing the ball, and the Astros are going to be patient with him to see if this is just a slow start, and or his timing's off, or if he's washed or not. But they're not going to panic. They're not going to cut him, and I don't think Leperfido's ready yet to be called up. I know fans are screaming for him to be called up, but he has a 32% K rate in AAA so far.
Yeah.
And he's going to be facing major league pitching. I think Astros fans probably need to slow their excitement over Leperfido. There's reasons to be excited about him, but I don't think he's quite ready yet. And Singleton is just there for, depth part. He's not a starting first baseman in the major leagues. So for me, I think right now, you got to just see if you can get Abreu back to where he was, or at least close to where he was late last year. And I don't think the team's going to panic with him yet.
I think it's Abreu, or I think it's a trade for somebody outside the organization. I think Leperfido, I do believe, will be a contributor, but to Tim's point, when he hits the ball goes very far.
Explodes up his back.
Doesn't always hit the ball, and my fear will be he will get called up and he will face Major League Baseball pitching for the first time. We saw this in 2018 with Tucker. He won't have a hot start. People will start to turn on him, but also we might be taking a step back defensively at first base. So I don't want to get the same offensive production for someone who, I know he's played more first base than we think he has, but it's still, as we learned, it's hard.
He's played 60 games in the minors, and the Astros are not playing him at first base right now in Sugarland.
Right. So to me, I think if it comes to the point, say in June, and Abreu hasn't started to roll, then I think you could see some kind of move outside the organization. But I think until then, it should be Abreu's job to lose. Singleton, I really think Singleton's up there for two reasons. He's out of options, and it was a cute story at one time. And I think the cute story is over.
Yeah, I mean, they don't have much depth at first base. So, and Singleton's a left-handed bat, the only left-handed bat in the bench. I mean, Caratini's a switch hitter. And he's, he's fine for a bench bat for depth purposes. I mean, he's there for that reason. He does have some power. He can take some walks. So he's not completely useless. I know fans are just all over him, but he's not obviously an everyday player unless he's playing for the White Sox, maybe.
Yeah, I guess I disagree on that. I just think I think we are still enamored with the story, and we're still enamored for that little 3-game stretch he had where he hit the ball out of the ballpark. I think that if we're just sitting up here waiting for him to run into something outside of going with the old school platoon thought, which much like Brad Pitt, I don't care about righty lefty. I don't see any reason to pitch hit for him for anybody that would be on your starting roster. For as much as people don't like Abreu, I still would rather have him take Hacks, not Singleton.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Andy.
No, that's fine. I mean, the problem with Abreu is he's never been a great fastball hitter throughout his career, but he used to feast on breaking balls, and he can't seem to recognize them at this point. So I don't know. It's age, unfortunately. I don't know that it's going to get better. I think it's going to get better than it is right now because I don't think he continues to have an OPS lower than some guys' batting average, because that's where he is right now. I think he's at 212.
Yeah, it's bad.
It's not great, but I don't think he's going to continue to be that bad. I just don't know that there's enough of a ramp that it's going to get league average, or there's a hole there. And the defense is, for every good play he makes, there's about 3 bad plays or questionable plays that he should make that they're a little bit off. Yankees fans, for instance, seem to be convinced that the only reason Ronel Blanco got a no-hitter is because Abreu dropped a ball on a relay in the first inning after
on
a while.
Purpose.
On purpose, because he knew if he dropped that ball, it'd be a perfect game somehow. There's a lot of gaps on Twitter with intelligence and knowledge that we should probably stop highlighting, to your point, but I'm a little bit addicted.
Well, the ironic thing about that play with Abreu is, first of all, it was on a double play ground ball, so
Yep.
it wouldn't have been an error anyways. You can't assume a double play. And it was a Rangers fan who screenshot that. That ball was after, he dropped the ball before the runner even got to first base. So even if he caught it, the runner would have been out. It wouldn't have mattered. It would not have affected the no hitter. But another
It's
point,
hard to affect a no hitter in the first inning, Tim.
right? But going back to the Leperfido and Singleton, I mean, Singleton's AAA OPS career is higher than Leperfido's is. So that's why I think we just need to really kind of slow down on Loperfido. I think he's going to be a serviceable major leaguer, but let's not rush him to the major leagues yet.
But chicks dig the long ball, and that's exactly what the conversation is right now, because he hit a bunch of home runs in a cluster the first week of the season. That's the only reason most Astros fans know who Joey Loperfido is right now.
Well, he is leading the PCL in home runs, I think, with 5, but I think he has 6 hits, and 5 of them are home runs. So it's. I saw somebody. We brought this up last week. Somebody on Twitter was like, "We need an old-fashioned thumper," which I guess means a guy who strikes out all the time or hits a home run. I prefer guys who hit for high average, high OPS. So he might be the guy they're looking for. But I think, again, to Tim's point, I think it's an all-around bad idea for the Astros, both for him and for the Astros, for them to bring him up tomorrow and expect him to play.
I mean, if the Astros had Dave Kingman in their organization, I'd take him at first base right now.
How old is he now?
I don't know when I'll find out. Certainly older than everybody on this call.
Right.
Ironically, I was a Mets fan when I was upstate New York, and Kingman was my favorite hitter. When he came to bat, I was glued to the television. And Seaver, when he pitched, I was glued to the television.
All right, so we have a hard out at 8:25, so we got about 4 minutes left. The week coming up, we've got one more against the Rangers because we're playing a stupid wraparound series the second week of the season, which is bizarre to me. And then we've got 3 on the road in Kansas City at beautiful Kauffman Stadium, and then back at home against the Rangers again. How much ground are we going to make up on 500? We'll start with Jim.
I actually think that we'll end up being 500 by the end of the Rangers series at a minimum. I just feel like there are too many moments where if the Astros, there are too many moments that slip through the Astros' fingers. And if the Astros are going to be the team I think we're all going to think they're going to be, they're going to start, those balls are going to start falling their way. They're going to stop kicking the ball around a little bit like they've done. I feel I'm still bullish on this team going to the World Series, and I am not going to stop that just because, again, we had a stretch that if we'd had this stretch in July, we'd have been like, that sucks. And we would still be laughing at the Astros Twitter members who were jumping off bridges. So I think by the time the Rangers series is over, the Astros will be at least 500.
Yeah, I'm not as positive on that, only because I saw the guys we're facing from the Royals, which is Reagans, Seth Lugo, and Brady Singer, probably their 3 best pitchers. And I don't know if there's any carryover from last year, but they took it to us last year in September, took 5 out of 6 from us. So, and we're not hitting right now. So, I mean, if they break out tonight and explode, I might be a little more confident about this week. But the bats still aren't there. We just got a great pitching performance from Blanco last night. So, I mean, I think it's going to be a kind of a struggle for the Astros to get back to where they are expected to be. And I'm not sure this week is where they're going to quite do it yet. That's my thoughts.
Well, I would like them to do it this week because after the Rangers, we get to play the Braves, which is no small task. And,
the walking wounded Braves, actually. I mean, that's becoming an easier task with every passing day, unfortunately, for them.
I feel bad for Braves Ashland. I really do. But I'd take wins any way we could get them at this point.
Yeah.
Still got to get through the Rangers a couple of times and the Royals. I'd like to say the Astros should be a heavily favorite against the Royals, and they probably will be, but the Royals are playing much better. So anybody who thinks that the Astros are going to walk into Kauffman with just 3 easy wins haven't watched these Astros for the last 7 years, because the Royals seem to be one of those teams that miraculously we just lose a lot of games to.
Can we talk about how asinine it is, though, that the Astros are playing a night game tonight with a game tomorrow? Like no travel day? Like no travel start? I mean, like what? I don't understand the logic of that at the beginning of the season. Why is it not a 1:10 start?
You're not going to start a game in the middle of the eclipse, Jim.
All right, you started at 2:30 because actually the Yankees did have to move their start time back because of that. But
I don't know. The whole concept of a wraparound series to me this early in the season is just weird. I get that you've got to figure out the holes and plug them in where the schedule maker has to make them, but that's just a tough draw. Having said that, we could split. Fromber's going tonight against Heaney. We have hit Heaney well in the past.
Think about how different it looks, though, if the Astros do get the split tonight, because part of the sky falling was the margin of victory in Game 1.
Yeah.
It made everybody feel worse about it, I think.
I mean, think about how much better we would all feel if the Astros had won at least 2 of the games against the Yankees they should have won and didn't. And we can talk about Josh Hader and some of the reasons that didn't happen in a different episode. But this isn't a bad team. It's a team that's run into some bad luck, and they've had bad performances to support that bad luck. And you get what you get over this 10-game stretch. But I do, like you, feel they're going to turn it around pretty quickly. I just don't know if it's going to be, this week or next week, or are we going to wait until we get to see the Nationals and the Cubs and the Rockies? Because that's what's left in April. That's a much better schedule for us. Parting shots, gentlemen, because we're at time. Tim, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's been a slow start offensively. You never know when the offense is going to pick it up, but they will eventually. I'm just not sure when that's going to happen. But yeah, I just say the sky's not falling. We are 3-7, but it's early in the season. There's still plenty of time to make up ground, and they'll be in there at the end. I can promise you that.
Look, I have no issue with Bregman's slow start. It's what happens with him. I just wish every spring he wouldn't say, "Hey, I figured out how not to have a slow start." just stop saying that, and I think everybody would handle it much better.
Dave Kingman is 75, so probably not an option for us, but probably could still hit fastballs better than Jose Abreu. For Go Astros, go Stros.
Go Stros.